you for attending this very first session prior to the RecSys conference. And so I wanted to be a little bit playful and talk about how machine learning and artificial intelligence should be all inclusive. Before I really dive into the topic, I'm going to introduce myself because some of you might have already met me and some of you didn't, which is all fine. My name is Caroline Therwath-Chavier, and I have been a tech recruiter for the last 11 years. I currently run my own company, but in the past, I worked for the finance industry. I worked for a French company called Criteo, which is still pretty active within the RecSys community. Then I worked in the video game industry, and today I'm going to work with startups, listed companies. And the common point of everyone is that they all work on machine learning related products. Sometimes it's going to be fundamental machine learning research. And I have a soft spot for the RecSys community because the first time that I attended the RecSys conference was in 2016 in Boston. And then I did several editions. And 5 years ago, I was the diversity and inclusion co-chairwoman. So it's a community that I adore, that I know really well. And today I'm super proud of being asked to do this presentation. And apart from being a recruiter, I'm also an enthusiastic citizen because for the last 7 years, I have been running a meetup group in France, which is part of a global organization called Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. And I will talk extensively about it. So here is my introduction, and I'm happy to meet you online today. So you might wonder, why is she here? Good question. I co-founded the meetup I just mentioned, so Paris Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. And just for you to know, this group today is almost composed of 5,500 members. So you have several organizers on the picture, and the goal of WeMLDS is to support and promote women and gender minorities who are practicing, studying, or are interested in the field of machine learning and data science. And you might not know it, but this nonprofit was born after a NOREPS conference. The founder, Erin Liddell, just attended the WeML workshop, and she was very enthusiastic. You know, she met a lot of fellow women, and then she came back to work, and she ended up being, again, the only one in her team. And because she was missing, you know, this feeling of being part of a group, she created WeMLDS. And right now, WeMLDS, I will show you worldwide. So sorry, I'm going to introduce the Paris team. You have Diane, Marie, Juliette, Chloe, Natalie, and myself. And I'm the only one who's not a machine learning practitioner. I am a recruiter of machine learning professionals. The other ones are researchers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers. So WeMLDS on the global scale, it is important because you might have met people or you might want to attend some meetup. We are present all over the world in 6 continents. Globally speaking, we have more than 76,000 members spread within 103 chapters in 36 countries. And I don't know if you noticed, but I'm going to be super proud saying it because it's something I would have never guessed when we created the Parisian chapter. We are the 2nd largest chapter in the world, behind San Francisco, in front of New York City, and the 4th largest is based in Africa, in Nairobi. So it is interesting because it gives you a hint about how vivid the machine learning community can be in some locations. So if you don't know, I invite you to go to the WeMLDS website and check if there is one chapter by any chance where you are in the world or where you're traveling. In Europe, if I focus on this area, because this year RecSys is going to be happening in Italy, you have one in the Netherlands, several in Germany, several in Spain, which is pretty active. In Paris, in France, we have two, in the south and in Paris. And you have some, in Cambridge, when universities are really active as well when it comes to machine learning. And during the pandemic, just a little wink, because we couldn't host meetups at the time, we organized joint meetups with fellow European chapters, for instance, one with Kiev. And I'm also here because I am a fighter when it comes to inclusion within the AI ecosystem. 4 years ago, I traveled to India to make a presentation about that. We're not going to watch it today, but if you're curious, you can. It's on YouTube, it's available. And I'm going to skip. I think this is maybe why, I don't know, they didn't tell me, but maybe the RecSys community thought about me because a few years ago, prior to the RecSys conference, I wrote an article saying how much I loved and I still love the RecSys community. And I saw, the growth of the women in RecSys happening. And each year it was more and more enthusiastic. The group of women and underrepresented people got bigger and bigger. And I think this is also a unique point that can characterize the community. Okay, it's a very welcoming community, and I think they embrace differences in general. So if you didn't know about this article, feel free, it's still online. And maybe I'm here because something is happening. AI is in everybody's mouth and mind, and you are people want to hire you, people want to collaborate with you, people are reading your research papers, people are careful about what you do, and you can also set the tone about what will be studied, what will be talked about. So this was the cover of Time magazine last year, and you will see they just released the newest version. It was 10 days ago. I will introduce it later. Just for you to know, the structure of the presentation is going to be quite easy. Just talking about the AI landscape in general from the economical perspective, a focus about inclusion in AI, and I will finish and wrap the session about ecological and political risk, because I think it's really intertwined with inclusion. And please, I forgot to take away the deceptive use of intelligence in AI, because it is usually something I talk about when people don't know about machine learning or AI, and I take some time to explain, which I will not do today. So this is a paper from last year. I'm not teaching you anything. When OpenAI released ChatGPT, it really boomed the research when it comes to NLP, and you can see on the graph on the bottom right, the increase of papers based on LLM boomed last year, and it's still pretty observed, okay? And it also changed a lot of things within the RecSys community. So the transition is quite vivid once again. Everyone is trying to board the AI trained, but my concern is to make sure that the right people board the AI trained, because sometimes we forget to think about the composition of the team, the ethical side of stuff, and I know within the RecSys community, it's not something we miss. And I'm going to skip because visually speaking, it can be aggressive, this GIF. So before talking about inclusion, I'm very interested to say something which to me is obvious. there is an economical revolution happening. The fact that we can automate, that we can augment, that we can help some business decision making or shape the future of research is something that we should never forget when we work, when we meet new people, or when we design our research. And when you look at the data, globally speaking, when ChatGPT changed everything, everybody was like, oh, let's forget about AI. We are going to talk about generative AI. In terms of global market, it's evaluated around $151 billion. This is massive. And when you look at the application of generative AI and artificial intelligence in general, you will see that it's going to be used for some topics are full of purpose and some are just economically driven. Let me explain. I think that using machine learning when it comes to healthcare is going to enable us to open new doors of research, to enable doctors to spend more time with the patients than on the diagnosis part. And when you look at, for instance, the spread allocated to advertising and media in general, I'm not, on a personal level, I'm not sure sometimes it's useful. So it's just a piece of data I wanted to share with you because I am a recruiter and sometimes I will refuse to collaborate with some companies because they want to do AI work, which I think is very doomed or unethical. And again, when we look at the landscape of the Gen AI companies, it's quite well spread. It's a lot in the US, a lot in Europe, and I'm waiting, for instance, to have more actors in India and in general in Asia. So what I want you to remember about why I talk about the economical landscape is that there is a paradox. Machine learning is reviving century-old fascination for robots. And sometimes you will notice that people are going to be both feared and is going to be feared and celebrated at the same time. That's why I'm going to wrap up this section and talk about inclusion. I cannot throw those big numbers at you and not talk about the core of why it is important. No one must be left behind the machine learning revolution which is happening. Unfortunately, this data comes from Element AI, and it comes from 2017, and it didn't change much. Okay, that's why I leave it on my slide. Women within the machine learning research community are 12%. When you look at the most recent report from the UNESCO, it's 28% of the world researchers who are women, okay? And we need to keep on fighting against, the unconscious bias that you will associate a gender with a skill, a gender with a job. And I personally think that we all need to be role models, accessible role models, and that the existence of women in RecSys is uber important. And just to give you another data, for instance, at WMLDS Paris, 50% of our speakers present their work for the very first time to the community. And I think it's important because they get feedback, they can interact with peers, with similar people, and usually our speakers are always isolated. They are the only woman within their team, which I think is a regret. Okay, it's not always the case, but it's one time out of two the situation they face. And when you look at global data still from the UNESCO, we have a leaky pipeline. We have a lot of female bachelors. Then we have the same number of female in master's degree. And the leak happen especially when it comes to PhD and researchers. The explanations are numerous. I think you might know them as well as me, but these data these data are not changing throughout time, which I think is a concern. So we have to stick around and we have to keep on doing the job that we do in terms of representation. And I don't know if you know those numbers, but again, it was edited from Element AI. They compiled the name of the authors of the conferences like NeurIPS, ICML, and ICLR. And you could see that, for instance, in Taiwan, 26% of the authors were women. When you look at France, it was around 50%. And to me, the surprise when you look at the bottom of the chart, India, Finland, and Sweden. I don't know for you if you agree, but it's a little bit counterintuitive for the countries on the bottom section of this graph. And I know that in RecSys, you have similar data. It could be interesting, to publicly share it, just to empower the community and to show how diverse the community is. And again, when you look at a broader talent pool, this data comes from a study that was led across Europe. And you could see that there was a gender gap among the machine learning professionals. And so, for instance, women were the most represented in Lithuania, in Finland, in Italy. And then the countries that were not doing so good were Austria, Poland, Denmark. So I invite you to have a look at this data. It was a work based out of LinkedIn and different sources. And so I said it again, but I will state it. The fact that women in RecSys is existing is important because you need to have an easy access to people who look like you, to people who got the same obstacles on the way, people who might have been awarded and that can share pieces of advice for you to be awarded, for you to have possibly a more diverse jury for your PhD defense. The example of use are numerous, okay? So keep on doing it, connect with the women, stay in touch online, and it will also grow your career paths on the long run. Again, the fourth industrial revolution is happening, and it should not happen without minorities and women. This is going to enable me to pause. On my day-to-day work, I will never focus exclusively on women. I talk about all the underrepresented groups, disabled people, LGBTQ plus people, foreigners, people of different skin colors. And I don't know if you know, but for a French person, it's not so frequent because we are a little bit cold feet about tackling those issues. If we were in the US, it would be an open conversation that we would have. For instance, I look up to what is being done in the UK because they have a different culture, they have a different history, and they are more inclusive than we can be in France, for instance. So here is a typical engineering team or research team in everybody's mind. Again, it's a cartoon, so it's going to exaggerate, but I must say, most of my clients, they look like that. And they say, why don't we have any fresh ideas around here? Yeah, people have the same academic background. People worked in the same past companies. They are from the same gender. They are from the same ethnical group. And when you want to do precise and universal research, this is not the right way to do things. And diversity is not something that is just making minorities happy. It's also very useful for the machine learning ecosystem. We need people from various demographic, cultural, socioeconomic backgrounds, and to make sure that the use of AI is going to target everybody and not just a tiny group of people who are privileged. I'm going to tell you a story. The first time that I heard about biases in research was within a RecSys workshop in Boston. And it was an enlightening moment because it created bridges between sociologists and machine learning researchers. And I thought it was a very powerful symbol to have hard sciences and human sciences working together. And I think on the long run, the machine learning ecosystem should create bridges with lawmakers, with the political ecosystem, with engineers, with everybody who is going to use and create AI systems. So we need to have diverse research teams or engineering teams to fight against bias, to make sure we are fair in the way we do things, to make sure that we're not going to lack of representation. You know, for instance, like people who are able-bodied are going to be overrepresented over disabled individuals or people with limitations when it comes to the use of their body. Accessibility is not an option. It should be accessibility by design, a constraint that is intellectually challenging to everyone. And I say that I've heard engineering teams saying, you know, it's just going to be targeting at dozens of people. It's not relevant. It always kills me when I hear this. And this is a true story. It was back in November 2023. One of the most famous French bosses introduced a new AI company. You have the full company in front of you, and you have Eric Schmidt, if you recognize it, with the blue suit. And the woman standing is not even an engineer, is not even a researcher. She was the one creating the financial plan. And I think this is not acceptable anymore. You cannot fund, you cannot announce a research group or an AI project without thinking about the signs you're going to share to the public eye. So I complained publicly, and I got a feedback from the boss, and he agreed that they made a communication mistake and that it would not happen again. But, you know, it has been 7 years now that I work on inclusion and diversity. I feel like I'm being a parrot. I'm always stating the same stuff again and again without seeing much of a change, but I will not give up. And the benefits. Avoiding biases is going to make sure that the products we deliver or that people use are not going to discriminate at anyone. We are going to improve the innovation process because we're going to be more creative about the angles, about the solutions that we want to offer. And we might also think about a broader user research that we do. And the ethical considerations, I'm going to be quite superficial because I think this is something which is obvious to you, but accountability, being transparent, and to generate trust from the users to the tools or the research you do, and making sure that the standards we all use are changing on the way, okay? It's not because stuff has been done in the past in a certain way, that we need to keep on doing it. We can challenge it and maybe update it, making it different, and keep what is best and give up what is unsatisfactory. And I have bad news. Women are often being erased from the AI history. So this was a piece from the New York Times last December. They talked about AI, and I always make this joke. When I see Elon Musk and I always think, why don't they put my name with AI? Because I am as skilled as he is. So, so that's just for the joke. But this is a problem, and that's why I insist on the fact of being a role model. If you are being asked to being interviewed on a video for a journal piece, please accept it, because we need to have different faces coming up when it comes to AI. And I didn't want to be so harsh, but some journalists are doing the proper work. So this is a piece from Fast Company. This is an online newspaper, and they did a piece on why the future of AI is relying on women. And they didn't forget to mention Fei Fei Li, Joy Walamwini, Timni Jibru. So sometimes we have encouraging signals, and this is what I want to see more and more. And you remember, yeah, sorry. Why symbols matter? It's because there is also an issue. The founding members who create startups, the ones who get the money, are massively white male. For instance, in the US, read this, only 1.7% of all the venture capital went to female founders. If you have never heard about venture capital, it means that it's investment companies financing and giving money to startups, basically. And so the money is being held by wealthy men funding men who look like them. So we need to have diversity within the VC ecosystem who support diverse creators of tech companies. And yet I see another paradox here. We talk about AI, but a lot of women were at the forefront of image processing, of many area of expertise, and yet they are always left aside. And there is an issue because most of the AI systems, sometimes when they are sexy on the paper, they do not target women. They do not target Black people, people of color, LGBTQ, or disabled people. So those applications might not be always safe for underrepresented individuals. And I will go as fast as possible. The future of AI depends on women because women bring safety. They build use cases the world embraces, and they enable AI to make even more money. Simple. And can I pause? I'm not always super at ease with the fact that you say that when you have diversity, it brings more money. Because when you have a tensed economy, these are the teams or the budgets that will decrease. So I would say that it's a moral value thing. You need to have diverse teams because this is the right thing to do. And I'm just going to give you a few examples, and I will wrap the session within 5 minutes. But I don't know if you know them. If some of you run, when the Strava app got created, women got harassed and aggressed because other runners could analyze and see live their running path. And so once the team realized that, they enabled women to erase the public sharing of their running session happening. Uber, they created a feature enabling people who were in the car to share their location with a friend, a family member, to make sure that they were not raped or not being aggressed by the driver. And my favorite example is the Apple Bank example. When they released the service, a straight couple in the US, having the same diploma, having the same job, and having the same salary, asked in parallel for a money loan. The woman in the couple got 30% less than her husband. I'm just putting it out there. And when Apple Health released the app, you could not track your period. You could track everything, the number of steps and so on, but not your period. It's a bit of a shame when you know that half of the population is concerned. That's it. And I wanted to be a little bit more optimistic, because when there is a will, there is a way. I mentioned the Time magazine cover earlier. They almost have had a 50-50 representation, which is encouraging. And a few days ago, they released the same equivalent cover. And again, you can see diversity being represented. So again, those signals, they will enable little girls to feel like, yeah, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a researcher, I can have a career in research, and they will do it, and they will go for it, which is the right thing. So if you don't have any question, I'm just going to finish with this, is to think about beyond business. Okay, I am a recruiter, I talked a lot about business and inclusion, but the ecological side of things and the political risk is also something I deeply care about, because machine learning is not without risk. Sometimes we lack explainability, which is an issue. We are going to share incorrect information, and the environmental impact of the machine learning systems we develop is sometimes questionable. That being said, there was a worldwide study led by McKinsey, which was interesting. They asked people, about what do you think is going to be risky when it comes to Gen AI? And a lot of people answered inaccuracy, cybersecurity, intellectual property, and compliance issues. And you see, explainability comes in the 5th position. Funnily, the political stability and the environmental impact comes at the very bottom of SOF. To me, it's a surprise, but the set of people who answered the survey were not so knowledgeable when it comes to AI. And this is my favorite study. It's one that were led by a French statistical institution called Ipsos. They led a global opinion and expectation analysis about artificial intelligence. And they asked to random citizen one simple question. Products and services using artificial intelligence have more benefits than drawbacks. So it was a statement, and they asked people if they agreed or not. And look at it. In China, 78% of the people agreed with the statement. Then Saudi Arabia, India, Peru, Mexico. And I'm quite proud of my country. In France, the very bottom, people disagreed with this statement. So again, I studied political science, and I'm fascinated, and I've been working in AI for 10 years. The link is here. AI can also be misused, and we need to ask ourselves, who is going to benefit from what we work on and what we use? Now, I'm going to skip this part because to me it's what I just described. Diversity is essential. It is important to build inclusive and unbiased technologies, and the effort to promote diversity should be multifaceted. It means that we need women, we need men to be on board with that, and we need everybody. We need people working in universities, the education institution in general, and we also need political representatives, journalists, lawmakers to be interested about that. And I'm going to finish. I had like general pieces of advice if you're interested, like from the recruiter that I am, but I would like to welcome your question first and see if I can talk about that later. So if you have any question, that's the moment you can open your mic, or if you want to make a remark about what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for the lovely talk. It was great to see the gender disparity that's in AI and what we can possibly do. Before I open the floor for questions, I'll stop the recording and
Good.
then we can have a
Maybe while